Borne of Caution by Fuggmann, Act 1, Chapter 1.
She really likes you, you know?
Lee groans, setting the bloody bucket in his gloved hand down and wiping at his sweaty forehead. Behind him, the staff door to the lion exhibit closes with a pair of clicks. I know, McCurry is pissed, don't rub it in. The first voice laughs, deep and hearty.
Well, can't get them to love you all the time, can you? Lovely Lady McKibber likes her routine, and you broke her big rule of not changing. Mommy Mara's scent all over ain't helping either. Lady McKibber be thinking you cheating on her.
Lee looks up to the tall speaker. Before him is a large African man with a shaved head, a beaming smile and eyes sparkling with mirth. He's clad in the same khaki bush trekking outfit that most animal handlers in the Columbus Zoo use as a uniform, Lee included. On his belt is a radio, currently turned off as to not spook the lions, and on his right breast pocket is a name tag reading Asir. Lee runs a glove-clad hand through his sweaty hair with a sigh. I know. With how David called out so suddenly, someone had to check up on the tigers, and I drew the short straw. Mara's in heat again and is real cuddly with anything even vaguely smelling male. She walked up to me without an ounce of aggression. Asir nods and hums, scratching his stubble-covered chin.
Yeah, no wonder Lady McCurry was giving you the stink eye then. Smelling another female, one Johnson for cubs no less. On any of her handlers gonna make her mad.
The shorter man grimaces. He had to carefully maneuver in the enclosure as to not let McCurry, the eldest lioness, be downwind of himself. The other lions gladly approached for their admittedly late lunch, with McCurry trailing behind, already knowing none of the foolish younglings would eat her share. By the time Lee realized the wind had shifted, the old lioness had already gone silent and was maneuvering into his blind spot. Lee bit a steady retreat, as running would make her chase, and it gave him enough time to see the fury in her eyes. If she caught him, Lee would have been dead. Harsh is the realization that any animal could turn on you. Think you can cover the lions alone for a few days so McCurry can cool off? Asir nods with a chuckle.
That's fine. The boys at the reptile house gonna need some extra hands anyway. They be setting up a spider exhibit while the new rattlers be shipping in. Lions, all Asir can do. Now spiders.
He drops his grin and shudders.
Can't do spiders. No. Them beady eyes and crawly legs and hooked fangs be haunting my dreams,
he says, rubbing his arms as if to ward off a chill.
Suit yourself,
Lee says with a shrug.
Any idea when that's going down?
Asir pulls his phone from his pocket and checks the time.
3-ish? They getting the buggers in and set up in the back while the enclosures be converted for 'em. Enough time to catch some lunch and a nap in the supply closet. Nice,
Lee thinks with a grin, turning towards the exit to the visitors area.
And don't be sleeping in the admin closet, Miss Jonesy knows.
Lee stops. I said that out loud, didn't I?
It's a bad habit you got.
Lee didn't even need to turn to know Asir was smiling. The man just laughs when Lee keeps walking. Lee steps out into the visitor area, barely avoiding a kid that runs by with an exhausted mom trailing behind. He looks around and takes in the throngs of people in the zoo today. Everyone is crowded by the fence of the lion exhibit, watching with gasps and exclamations broken up by beeping of cell phone cams as the lions eat. Young, old, man and woman alike watch raptly, and thankfully no one has the gall to try and throw things into the enclosure this time. Just yesterday, a pizza crust thrown by some brat managed to bean poor cub Sefu in the eye, and both himself and Asir rushed out to the culprit. Lee isn't terribly intimidating, only being of average height and build, but even an indignant mom quickly caves to the large African man so angry that he accidentally slips back into his native Swahili. The family and bawling child left without needing an escort out. Respecting the animals isn't that hard, is it? Either way, today seems to be going just fine, making Lee smile as everyone points and gushes over cubs Sefu and Zabiri fighting over a rib bone. Either way, today seems to be going just fine, making Lee smile as everyone points and gushes over cubs Sefu and Zabiri fighting over a rib bone. The man continues on, gliding through the Saturday crowd with practiced ease back toward the main admin office and towards his much-needed lunch. Once or twice, he stopped by a zoo guest for directions, and he gives them out almost without noticing, knowing where everything is by heart. As he walks, Lee runs a hand across his forehead and speeds up, hoping to get out of the beating late summer sun soon. Lee slips into the gift shop near the front of the zoo and walks along the wall to a door marked Employees Only. With a swipe of his keycard, the door opens with a click and lets him back into the admin office. Inside the small lounge area, a few staff, animal keepers, security, and even an on-site cop mill about. talking in small groups or seated at one of the small tables eating lunch. In the corner of the room, an old TV with the news perpetually playing fills the background. Lee promptly ignores all of that and makes a beeline for the shared fridge, snatching a Tupperware container of pasta from it before finding a table for himself. Lee pulls his phone out as he brings a forkful of food to his mouth, clicking on his GBA emulator to continue his modded Pokemon Emerald run. Not too much was added, simply a randomized starter and all first 3 gens available in the wild. Beating the first gym leader, Roxanne, a rock-type specialist with the Vulpix as a starter, was a gigantic pain though. Will-O-Wisp and Confuse Ray really earned their place in Vulpix's moveset after that. The Vulpix has stellar IVs and even has the hidden ability Drought, so it's too bad her lax nature means a special defense reduction. She would have made a good wall.
That's alright though,
Lee thinks.
I could still build a good team around her.
He marks the little fox with a heart in the box system. With the first gym beaten, Lee took one last look around Rustboro and talked with every NPC before heading to the next route. A chair across the table squeaks as someone sits down.
Still a big Pokemon fan, eh?
Lee looks up as he finishes his last bite of lunch, seeing fellow keeper and member of the reptile house, Marcy, sit down with him. Lee nods, pausing his game to address her.
Now and forever. The only thing I like more than Pokemon is actual animals. Broke my heart as a kid when my jerk brothers said they were real, only for Ma to tell me they aren't.
Marcy snorts and grins.
He wouldn't be a proper brother if he didn't mess with you.
True, and I busted his favorite G.I. Joe as revenge, Lee quips, making Marcy laugh.
So, what brings you over to my lonely little table?
The woman collects herself.
Asir told me over the radio one of your lions thinks you're cheating on her, so you need a break from back there for a few days. Want to help set up an arachnid exhibit in the meantime?
It's not my fault Mara felt like rubbing up on me, Lee grumbles. But yes, I was actually about to call you once I was done here to ask just that. Thanks for saving me the trouble.
Of course.
Both zookeepers stand, Lee pocketing his phone, then stop as tornado sirens begin to sound out in the distance, their wails echoing across the whole zoo hauntingly. Under the wailing of the sirens is the audible panic of several of the louder, more skittish animals. Everyone else in the lounge likewise looks bewildered. One glance out the window shows that the sky is clear and blue, as a summer day should be. Even the fickle weather of Ohio can't shift that fast.
What the heck is going on?
Another keeper asks, no one in particular.
Don't know. Some kind of malfunction?
A gift shop cashier finishes her lunch suggests.
Someone must have broken something big then.
Someone near the back of the room chimes. More sirens echo in from the not-so-distant city of Columbus, the capital of Ohio and one of the largest cities in the United States. The extra sirens mix with the closer ones, forming an unnerving din. Then, from the north, even more sirens cry out of the city of Delaware. The confusion gripping the room slowly turns to worry.
Alright, it's one thing for our sirens to mess up, but both Columbus and Delaware going at once?
Lee says, pulling out his phone.
What is going on?
Then, he gets an answer he didn't want. All at once, every cell phone in the room screams out alarm tones at maximum volume. Several people flinch and a few bite back screams from the unexpected scare. The message flashing on each one is infinitely more damning than any frightening alarm tone.
Presidential alert issued. Take shelter now and tune into official news stations for more detail.
All eyes fly to the TV in the corner.
Rising tensions may mean disaster for negotiations. Back to you, Tom.
The anchorwoman says as the news shifts to a smiling man with the weather map behind him. Before he can get a single word in, the screen suddenly goes black. Everyone watching waits, coiled with tension. After several seconds, the TV screams out with the chilling screech of the EBS. After several screeches, a synthesized voice begins to speak with an eerie calm.
This message is transmitted by the order of President and Department of Homeland Security. At approximately 12:37 p.m. EST, the North American Aerospace Defense Command detected incoming intercontinental ballistic missiles. These missiles are believed to be carrying nuclear warheads of unknown yield. Known targeted cities include Washington, D.C., New York, NY, Dallas, TX, San Francisco, CA, Seattle, WA, Pittsburgh, PA, Chicago, IL.
The TV rattles off more cities in its monotone. The longer it goes on, the more hope begins rising in the room.
Jesus, this is unreal. But if there's anything good about Ohio, it's how irrelevant we are. Why waste a nuke here?
Lee thinks to himself, trying vainly to steady his heart rate.
There is nothing worth nuking. Oh my god, I can't believe the crazies online were right. Phoenix, AZ, and Columbus, OH.
What? A deathly stillness, grips the entire room. Just outside, screams overtake the sirens.
If you are located within 100 to 200 miles of any of the listed locations,
The TV drones on.
take shelter immediately. Warhead impact is estimated to be in the next 30 to 45 minutes. Keep a radio and tune into local emergency channels. If you do not know your local emergency channels, look them up now. Internet service cannot be guaranteed after impact. Shelter in place and do not move until an all clear is given. A location underground is optimal. Failure to follow these instructions may lead to injury or death. This message will repeat.
Lee looks around at his thunderstruck coworkers, but can't hear a word of their frantic yelling over his heart pounding in his own ears and the growing screaming outside. He falls backward, his back hitting the wall and letting him slump to the floor. Absolutely nowhere in the zoo can stand a nuclear blast, he whispers to himself. We're going to die. We're actually going to die. The man frantically takes out his phone and hits the first contact inside, his mother. He holds the phone up to his ear, but only hears,
All circuits are busy. Please try again later.
before it can ring out even once. With a growl, he calls again and again.
All circuits are busy. Please try again later.
Freak! Did everyone have the same idea? Lee raises his arm and almost dashes the smartphone across the ground, but controls his temper at the last moment with a deep, heaving breath. He drops the now useless device into his pocket and grips his head in his hands, tears of both fear and frustration stinging his eyes. Fuck! He raises his head, seeing everyone else isn't coping much better. Most fill the room with screams and muttered prayers asking God to save them. One poor intern has the cashier girl in a death grip of a hug, crying large, ugly tears as the shell-shocked girl rubs his back absently. Several of the keepers slip out the door, probably to go see their animals one last time. Bang! Everyone jumps and screams. Lee stares at the slumped form of the on-site police officer. He's wide-eyed and bleeding from a hole in the side of his cranium. His Glock pistol held in limp fingers. The wall to his side is painted a morbid red. The man's mouth opens and closes several times before his eyes unfocus and he goes limp. Lee quashes the temptation to take the gun and follow the man into the afterlife. Someone else, an older man in overalls with a tool belt, picks up the gun and drops the magazine, looking at it with shaky hands. There are 16 more bullets, if anyone wants to go out on their own terms, he says quietly, placing the gun on a table after putting the magazine back in. Impending death does things to people. Really reveals who they are. Sweat rolls down Lee's forehead and into his eyes, stinging him. The crying intern wipes away his tears and steps towards the gun, a sudden calmness to him. Lee screws his eyes shut and plugs his ears. Bang! Red splatters across the ceiling and another one moves on. The crying and panic calms in favor of numb shock. Everyone now too overloaded to process everything at once. All the remaining people in the lounge slowly settle into a small group along the floor and chatter dies down to a silence. Everyone is content to wait, and no words are needed to communicate that. Outside, only the wails of the sirens remain. The cries of the guests are gone, and in their place is the distant beeping of car horns. Lee looks down at his phone, now noticing it has no signal at all. With a sigh, he opens Pokemon Emerald again in a vain attempt to distract himself. The front gate is probably clogged to all hell, Lee murmurs, hugging his knees to his chest with his free arm. Glad I'm not on parking lot duty today. A few people chuckle, and the maintenance man who set the gun aside even says, Hear, hear, brother. Quiet falls over the group again, and goes unbroken, except for the sounds coming from Lee's phone as he takes his character back to Little Root Town.
How long until?
Someone trails off. That was a good 20 minutes of freak out, someone else says. It can't be long now, people. If you've got any regrets, out with it now. No one speaks up, and the second speaker scoffs. Of course. Lee sighs and leans his head back, praying to whatever power that is listening to make sure the coming doom is quick, both for him and all the animals. The thought of Mikiri, the cubs, Mara and her mate Jupiter, or any of the animals he'd come to love like people, suffering fills him with endless dread. Why should they be killed for mistakes of people? They shouldn't. They're the biggest victims here, being condemned to die because forces they can't comprehend or control don't even consider them in the collateral damage? My one regret, Lee begins, making all eyes turn to him, was that I could never properly tell all my charges how much I love them. I went to school and came here to learn all about animals of all sorts. and I can gauge how much they like me thanks to those lessons, but I never had a good way to tell them. The curse of a language barrier that can't be breached, I guess.
Geez, make the rest of us feel bad, why don't you?
Lee turns to the speaker to retort, but stops and screams when a second sun blooms in the distance. The flood of white light through the south window blinds instantly burns lines into the side of his face so fast he can't even scream. The screaming begins again as everyone scrambles to cover their eyes. Hardly a second later, the shockwave hits. All the windows shatter into slivers of razor-sharp glass and shoot northward. Several lodge themselves into Lee's side or fly by in open gashes, making him cry out at the sharp agony. His own scream and the rest of the world goes silent as his ears pop from the pressure. The whole room shakes and cracks like an earthquake struck the entire zoo. And then, fire. The fire, the fire, the fire, the fire. Everything hurts. Everything burns. Make it stop. Mommy, God, Jesus, anyone, please. Make it stop. Make it go away. Make it stop. Make it stop. Make it stop. 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 An instant later, the Columbus Zoo and Aquarium is no more.